Hey folks, Collin, certified nutritional consultant, numerologist, bringing you another talk today. Today, I want to talk about the delusion of science and the indoctrination that elevates science to the status of a god in our Western programmed society that's really taking over the entire world and really held as the default kind of worldview of more intelligent people generally, that hard science and science is God and we should trust science and science is everything. Okay, I got inspiration for this from Rupert Sheldrake. Did an awesome talk, TED talk that was actually banned, which in my opinion is the height of propaganda, that they banned such a awesome, amazing video. He did a video he did a talk at TED, The Science Delusion, and he wrote a book called The Science Delusion. He had to republish it in the U.S. as, Freeing Science or something? What the heck was it? I have it right here. Science Set Free, he had to call it in the U.S. In the U.K., he called it The Science Delusion. But he breaks down the delusions and the dogmas of science, because science can become just as dogmatic as religion can. So here are the 10 dogmas. I'm going to give you some of my own kind of thoughts about it. I'm going to read one of my interesting thoughts on the subject and hopefully break down the indoctrination and the programming that science is everything and help you realize and understand the wisdom of the East and that there's other parts of our reality that we may not be aware of, and science can't prove and decide and show us everything. You know, the limits of human knowledge, we're all just human. We're only aware of what we're aware. You know, it's very limited because we're limited by our own understanding of the universe. We can't see other dimensions. We're limited by our 5 senses. There's only so much we can understand. The 10 dogmas of science, according to Rupert Sheldrake, nature and the universe is mechanical or machine-like. Okay, we think that everything is made up of bits and pieces and machine parts and, you know, and things of that nature. That we're able to dissect and pull everything apart, and it's a materialist kind of worldview. So he says that science as a method of inquiry versus science as a worldview and science as a belief system. That's the difference. Like, yeah, maybe we should have science as a method of inquiry, and it's good as a method of inquiry, but if it becomes a worldview, a belief system, that can become very dogmatic. So science at its basic level is simply a belief system. You know, we believe that the scientific method and the principles are accurate when none of us really know anything about what we're doing here in the universe. And you know, if you've really come to the wisdom that none of us really knows anything, then you're a wise person. This number 2, matter is unconscious. We think that matter is unconscious, when really matter is very much conscious. Mythbusters actually proved this, you know, through science. Of course, that's limited, but Mythbusters, and this was a book written by a scientist named, I forget, something Baxter, who wrote a book about plants that basically showed that plants are sentient, plants are conscious, plants are aware. Plants can literally read your mind. They hooked them up to a stethoscope, or not a stethoscope, but a lie detector polygraph, and in response to certain thoughts that a person had that they were going to burn the plant, just the person walked into the room and he was going to burn the plant in his mind. That was the thought he had with a lighter. The plant started reacting to that on the actual lie detector polygraph, showing that these crazy spikes in vibration, you know, that the plant was reacting and put out these stress signals. So matter is conscious. Okay, that's just one example. Laws of nature are fixed, like the speed of light and other constants that we consider constants in science. when Rupert Sheldrake shows that in older textbooks, the speed of light was different, and the process of finding the speed of light, they take all these averages from all these different people that are calculating the speed of light, and they find that the speed of light is different in different times of the day and in different places of the world, and they find a subjectivity here. We're indoctrinated by this objectivity when we don't understand quantum physics and we don't realize that we're whirling through space out here, and things can change, and there's a diurnal rhythm of the sun and the moon and things, and the laws of nature are not necessarily fixed. So he showed that the older textbooks had a different constant, and then what scientists did was they fixed the definition to include that these constants could be different. Yet the whole definition of a constant is that it's always the same, and that the laws of nature are always the same, and nature obeys certain fundamental, exact, perfect, always the same laws. When they don't think about that we are evolving and energy changes, and the universe as well as ourselves is evolving and things change. So the law of nature is alternation forevermore, Emerson said. So the constants are not really constant in science. He showed that. Check out his book. The total amount of matter and energy is always the same. Dogma number 4. Dogma number 5, nature is purposeless. That we don't really have a purpose here. It's just nature is nature, and it is what it is, and we can't, ascribe some purpose, because we can't allow for that type of stuff into the scientific method. It brings in too much subjectivity and whatnot, I suppose. But these are dogmas that are easily broken down by the mystical side of life, and by shamanic trances, and people see realities and feel realities that are beyond. There's a realm somewhere beyond, it seems like. And I'm going to read, so that's the 5 dogmas. That's 5 of them. Number 6, biological heredity is material. It's all in the genes. Genes are everything, and we are what we are, our genes, and what we inherit. There's nothing more than the bits and pieces that we can see, and our genes determine everything, etc. And number 7 dogma, memories are stored in your brain in a material way. What if they're not, folks? And neuroscientists think that everything comes from the brain and the mind is in the brain. This could or could not be true. None of us really truly know. Memories, number 7, memories are stored in your brain in a material way. Is this true or not? Number 8, the mind is inside your head. Consciousness is in your brain. Yet certain studies can show that, some people can say, yeah, if you cut out a part of your brain, then you will start behaving differently and you will lose those functions of that part of the brain. This is true, but are you a receiver? Is your brain just a receiver? Your brain could be a receiver. You make the metaphor, my friend gave me this idea that you pull a plug out of a TV and the TV starts working in a different fashion, right? Or it doesn't work at all. And you pull a certain wire out, and you say, okay, well, I guess consciousness is in the TV. The parts of the brain of the TV is where it comes from. But no, a TV is simply a receiver for, and a transmitter of what's coming to it. Is that maybe that's what the brain is? It's simply a receiver and a transmitter. That's what a TV is. A TV does not contain its own brain that is where everything in itself comes from. No, the signal is put out by satellites and sent to the TV, and then the TV just visualizes it onto a screen. That's all. The TV has no brain of its own, essentially. Okay, so, could go that way as well. Number 9, telepathy and psychic phenomena are impossible, yet there's this... yet everybody in some degree, usually unconsciously, can sense that people are staring at them, right? This is a universal thing that everybody has, that, you're sitting in class, and there's some TA, teacher's assistant up at the teacher's desk, and you're sitting there, doing your work and studying, and you look up and she's staring at you. And that happens like multiple times. You just somehow you look up at the right time and she's staring at you because you unconsciously sense that some gaze is upon you, and your eyes meet, and it's weird because you're like, why is she staring at me? She must like me, whatever. And we all have that. That happens to me all the time on a daily basis. I'll be walking through the vitamin department where I work, and somebody will be way over here. I'll be walking this way. Somebody will be way over here, staring at me for whatever reason. People just, lock their gaze sometimes out of boredom or whatever. And I'll just, for some reason, I'll turn and I'll keep walking, and I'll be like, why is that person staring at me? It's just this weird, and he theorized that the hunter, this came about in our evolution from predator and prey relationship, that the prey that could sense the gaze of the predator would have a better ability to escape and get away from and not get eaten. And I would actually wonder and put my own thoughts in here that maybe type O blood people, the hunters of the blood types, I wonder if they are more sensitive and in tune and attuned to that observer gaze upon, because I feel like it happens to me a lot, and I'm type O blood. I wonder if, because the type O is a more ancient blood type that is more associated with the hunter, the meat eater, that we were also prey, but yet we were also predator, that prey-predator kind of thing going on with type O's. I wonder if they're more attuned or sensitive, or this could actually probably also occur with people that just have a more hypersensitive or hypersensitive nervous system and or immune system, maybe even too, that can sense things, more easily with their just a very hypersensitive nervous system. Some people are more, their physiology is just more that way. Their nervous systems are more active than other people. Other people's nervous system being slower. Number 10, mechanistic medicine is the only kind that works. In medicine, in America, we focus on prescription drugs, and the mechanistic side of medicine, we rule out alternative medicine as nonsense, and we rule out vitamins and minerals and say they don't work, even though they unbelievably do. And we don't think homeopathic is real, yet in other places like Germany, they take some of this more esoteric or alternative medicine a lot more serious. They study vibrations, they study energy medicine and things of this nature that they take a lot more serious. This is this Western scientific, this indoctrinated, this program. We're also programmed by science being everything. Of course, I love science, and science has its limits too, though. Science can really show us a lot, and we've created a lot of technological advancements through science. Science is very important. Science is very awesome in a lot of ways, but you got to remember and you got to see the limits of science also, and don't be totally programmed that it's everything, and elevating it to this status of God. Nietzsche said God is dead, and so instead we put science in God's place, because none of us are religious and none of us believe in the metaphysical or mystical side of life, or the sacred, the dimension of the sacred, as Terence McKenna puts it. So let me read my thing here, and then I'm going to go keep going on some of the Sheldrake stuff. And I'm also elaborating with a lot of my own thoughts here, but so this is something that I wrote, just quick thing that I think it was well written. A most pointed and sharply outlined self-awareness gives you a blurry, wishy-washy, uncertain, and gray yin-yang middle ground view of the world as a place of possibility that is always obliterating what is most cherished and certain in science, and making you ever and ever more clueless and in awe of the majesties, mysteries, and magic underneath such an infinite, inspiring, and unknowable universe. The more we know, the more we realize we don't know. We can only know what we can know. There is so much more than human understanding. While science is progress, it may be a cyclical and limited progress. It may not be. While another kind of progress is underappreciated and goes unnoticed, namely, the dimension of the unconscious, of the soul, of the sacred, of the mystical, of the unfathomable, the incoherent, the irrational, the individual, the subjective, the Eastern, the casuistry, the ecstatic, the convicted, and the made up. Both and are the ways and. Just some rambling thoughts. Okay, this is something I wrote when I was feeling like, man, science isn't everything, man. So I had to write something like that because the subjective, we think everything has to be objective, like as if there is any objective anything anymore. If you know anything about quantum physics, the observer effect, the double slit experiment, the Schrodinger's cat, basically when you observe something, that changes the reality. You change a wave to a particle or a particle to a wave when you put your gaze upon something. You determine the reality of what that thing is going to be based on your observation of it. This is the observer effect. This is the double slit. This is Schrodinger's cat. This is quantum physics, okay? What you have in your own mind to some degree also determines the reality of what you're seeing in front of you. Okay, what you bring, you always color and change the effect. And so science always to some degree, you have double blind, placebo control, blah, 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 but you also have a hypothesis that actually starts the whole process of you even, doing the experiment. The hypothesis that this is going to occur and this is what we think, and so let's try and find it. And yeah, you might be more likely to find it because that's what's in your mind already. That's the scientific method. It always starts with a hypothesis, right? So it has its limits, and we just throw away our subjective, our own thoughts and our own ideas and our own soul and the dimension of the sacred, and we think that, everything's got to be objective, when the subjective can oftentimes be just as true because it's true to you. This is like pragmatism. I consider myself to some degree a pragmatist, which would say that it's not about whether something's true or false. It's about whether it's true for you. The value of something is what it does to you to believe in that. Like, if you believe that God exists, if that makes you a happier, better, stronger, more capable, healthy, powerful person, then therein lies the truth of that belief. That is true, in essence, because it makes you a better person and because it improves you and because it benefits your life. So pragmatism, I see some value in because they put emphasis on what the belief does for you. Because they probably understand, maybe William James somehow back then understood that to some degree a lot of things are subjective, and objectivism is to some degree, according to quantum physics, it's kind of like it doesn't exist. So the Newtonian kind of paradigm is changing to the quantum paradigm. He had a good quote, Rupert Sheldrake. I'm having to reproduce his video because this was a banned TED Talk, man. This is just an amazing talk. I can't believe they banned it. That's the height, like I said, of propaganda. The TED Talks of free thinking, supposedly scientific, like supposedly, progress-oriented kind of, organization, and they ban something that's very powerful and important to put a limit on our indoctrination. McKenna said, give us one free miracle and we'll explain the rest. And this is what the Big Bang is. It's one free miracle. This is our ideas about how the Big Bang, the universe began or whatever. Modern science is founded on this Big Bang that, now we can explain the rest if you just give us one free miracle. And maybe or maybe not, that's true. Big Bang, who knows? Out of nothing, from nowhere, just this Big Bang occurred. And, I'm just, you can believe whatever you want. I'm just showing you that there's other possibilities, folks. C.S. Lewis said, to say that a stone falls to earth because it's obeying a law makes it a man and even a citizen. And that was the point that he was saying that, he's talking about gravity, a stone falling to earth. It becomes a man and a citizen because we are the ones that, the humans are the ones that come up with these laws and come up with this stuff. So it's all human oriented. It's all limited by our own perception and our own limits, our five senses. It's, it comes out of our own sociology and psychology, and we color it, with our own minds. So he talks about morphogenic resonance, which is basically that everything has a collective unconscious to some degree and a collective memory, basically. Very interesting concept. That and he's shown that it basically shows that once you discover, like he talks about crystals, that you figure out or you discover how to crystallize a certain material or a certain elements that have never been crystallized in that way into that type of crystal before. It may take 40, 50 years to do it. And once you do it, all over the world, it becomes instantly much easier and everybody does it. When it took 40 years and you're using the same methods, and it's like, so he's saying everything has a collective memory. So once it's been done, it's like instantly all these people do it, like very much more easily. So that I can see how I'm sure there's holes in this argument that you're going to come up with based on that, because I'm not explaining it that well. I didn't actually read his book extensively, but I wanted to get this talk out because I've been thinking about this. But look into it. It's very interesting. He also talks about, a mouse learns, if you teach a mouse a new trick that's never been taught or whatever, then all over the world, this is a better example maybe, these mice will all of a sudden learn this new trick. And not that you've had like some breakthrough in the methods of teaching it a new trick. It just finally happened. And then all over the world, it's way easier for all these mice to now learn it because they have this collective memory that we all have to some degree in our unconscious somewhere, or in the unconscious, the collective unconscious, whatever, the ether, the plasma, wherever it is. This is what happens. It's true. And it makes me think also about the 4-minute mile. It took so long to break the 4-minute mile barrier for, runners running a 4-minute mile. And then all of a sudden, once it was broken, like all these people, like instantly, like over the course of, a few years, just broke it. Like it took forever. It took like years and years, 100 years or whatever to finally break the 4-minute mark. And then instantly all these people just start breaking the 4-minute mark. You could argue other things about all that, but the guy is very intelligent, man, and he explains it way better than I do. So you need to check out Rupert Sheldrake. And then he's got the illusions of objectivity. In shamanic journeys, we realize that objectivity can be, under the influence of certain drugs, we feel like we've entered a reality that just is somewhere else, another realm. And the objective, it just breaks down. The allegory of the cave in Plato, basically these people are in a cave and they're staring at this wall in the cave, and behind them there's these other people like doing this show or these dances or whatever. But all the people that are looking at the wall can see is the shadows. So they think the shadows are the reality because that's all they've ever seen. They've never seen behind them, when really there's real people back there doing stuff, and they think the shadows in front of them are the real thing because that's all they've ever known, yet behind them, that's the reality. So what we see is not always what it really truly is, and it also makes me think about the gaps that our brain actually fills in, that they know about in neuroscience, that our vision is limited and it has blind spots, and what we see is not actually always what is actually there. Our brain actually fills in the gaps. Like there's this thing where you are watching a person say a word and it's like gap, but he's really saying dap or something, but because his mouth looks like he's saying gap, our brain fills it in and actually hears dap or whatever. Like it's not exactly what they do, but that's essentially what they do. And so they they visually say the word gap, but they auditorily they paste over that, dap or whatever. But so auditorily they're really saying dap, but we're hearing gap, or vice versa, because of because of our vision is seeing it and our brain fills it in. It's very interesting. I don't know how you can look that up, but look up some neuroscience talks on the self, and and it might be able to find something on that. Scientists are human, they're frail. This is another illusion of objectivity, the humanity of scientists. Scientists aren't perfect. Science is not perfect. The active voice. That's another thing. The built-in bias of publication, the scientific fraud and the deceit that occurs. The corporate influence in the corporations that fund the scientific studies that basically fudge and fake this fake science and publicize it and put it into these publications when it's really skewed by the corporation that's trying to achieve a certain outcome to make more money. That happens all the time, scientific fraud and things. So again, the limits of science. Science is not everything. I love science. I love SciShow. I love, I'm a big fan of science, but remember that it has its limitations too, just like everything. At the end result, it's really simply a belief system. Science is a belief system. So, anyway, quick rant about my ideas about science, and you can't always go by it. So, hope you enjoyed it. Check out Rupert Sheldrake. You can still find the talk on YouTube, the Delusion of Science. It's not on TED anymore, but you can find it on YouTube. Check it out. Collin, certified nutritional consultant, numerologist. If you'd like a consultation on nutrition or on numerology or on personal development, I do a lot of those things, so hit me up. I'll put a link in the description below, collinchi@gmail.com, if you'd like any of that. And as always, rise.